When an officer observes a young girl wandering alone on the streets of a quaint town in Maine, he discreetly follows her. She leads him to a neglected structure just past the trees bordering the woods. What he discovers is startling, and upon understanding the full situation, tears begin to form in his eyes. On a lively evening in a quiet town in Maine, Officer James M. patrolled his regular route, observing the bustling crowd. He spotted a young girl, approximately 4 years old, appearing lost and scared. Her large eyes scanned the area as she held a worn-out teddy bear. Matthews felt a surge of concern. Cautiously, he started to trail her, keeping a safe distance. She navigated through the crowded streets, her steps unsteady. Gradually, she made her way toward a less familiar part of town, which became darker and more foreboding. Matthews tightened his hold on his radio, prepared for any scenario. As she reached the end of the main street, she veered into a tranquil park. The shadows grew longer as the sun set. Matthews paused momentarily, debating whether to approach her then, but chose to keep his distance, though his worry increased as he watched her small figure venture further into the park. The girl's anxiety seemed to escalate with every minute. She often looked back and clung tighter to her teddy bear. Matthews observed her shoulders shake. He desperately wanted to reassure her of her safety, but he held back, knowing that coming too close might frighten her away. She exited the park and headed toward the town's outskirts. The environment grew more isolated and bleak. The narrow streets were lined with aged, spaced-out buildings. The inviting lights and familiar faces of the town center were replaced by dark alleys and quiet, closed-up homes. The girl slowed down, her tiny feet dragging as she looked around, seemingly searching for something or someone. A sense of apprehension grew in Matthews. He recognized that this area was not secure, especially for a child by herself at night. Images of potential dangers flashed through his mind, his training compelling him to intervene. Yet he sought the right moment to do so. As they neared the woods on the town's edge, Matthews realized he couldn't delay any longer. The girl paused and glanced back one final time. This was the moment. He quickened his steps, resolved to protect her at all costs. "Wait," he called out, his voice absorbed by the rustling leaves in the growing darkness. Panic rose within him as he realized she was out of sight. He pushed through the undergrowth, frantically searching for any sign of her. The woods were dense, filled with low branches and thick foliage. Matthews tripped over roots and pushed leaves aside. He shouted for her again, but only silence answered, heightening his anxiety. Then, a soft, rustling sound came from ahead. Matthews pressed on, his hand instinctively going to his side. He emerged into a small clearing and saw a forsaken building looming before him. The rustling noise intensified, seemingly coming from inside. Approaching the building cautiously, Matthews noticed the entrance slightly open, the door barely hanging on its hinges. He entered, allowing his eyes to adjust to the dimness. The inside was cluttered with debris and broken furnishings, the air heavy with the smell of neglect. "Hello," he whispered, his voice echoing in the vacant space. He proceeded further inside. As he rounded a corner, he saw her, the girl crouched behind an old, toppled table. Relief washed over him, but quickly turned to concern. She was curled up tightly, her eyes wide with fright. "Hey, it's okay," he spoke softly, moving toward her slowly. "I'm here to help you." The girl looked up at him. She remained silent and still, but then timidly raised her hand, pointing deeper into the building. Matthews followed her gesture, his eyes straining in the dim light. The corridor stretched into darkness. He looked back at her. "What is it? What's back there?" The girl only shook her head, her fingers still pointing. Matthews felt a chill. Something was profoundly wrong. He extended his hand, but she recoiled. "I need to know," he urged. "Please try to explain what's happening." She shook her head again, tears filling her eyes. She was too scared to speak. Whatever had brought her here, whatever she was hiding from, was too terrifying to express. Matthews took a deep breath. He couldn't leave her, nor could he ignore the potential danger lurking deeper within the building. He stood and looked back toward the corridor. Every instinct urged caution, yet the urgency in the girl's eyes propelled him forward. "Stay here," he said gently. "I'll be right back, I promise." He walked toward the dark corridor, his flashlight slicing through the darkness, revealing more decay. The air turned colder, and a growing dread filled him as he moved forward. He felt as if eyes were watching him. He paused to listen. Nothing. Matthews approached the door and pushed it open slowly. His flashlight illuminated a small, cluttered room. He stood still for a moment. A touch on his hand startled him. It was the little girl, still silent and shaken, but now gripping his sleeve. As they ventured further into the structure, Matthew's flashlight uncovered evidence of recent occupancy. Makeshift beds crafted from old blankets and cardboard dotted the area, surrounded by scattered food wrappers and empty water containers. Clearly, someone had been staying here not long before. Matthews looked down at the girl, who silently pointed toward a cramped hallway branching off from the main space. He nodded and led the way, his senses heightened. The hallway, narrow and confined, seemed to morph the deeper they went, transitioning from graffiti-covered walls and peeling paint to a more ordered arrangement of crates and recent traces of activity. Matthews wrestled with questions: who had taken residence here, and what brought this girl to such a place. They arrived at the end of the hallway, faced with a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. The girl tugged at his sleeve again, her eyes wide with urgency. She gestured toward the door and then stepped back, her body tense, poised to run. Understanding her fear, Matthews knew he must proceed. He pushed the door open, the hinges groaning under its weight, piercing the heavy silence. Beyond lay a dimly lit room, a grimy window allowing minimal light. His flashlight swept across more arranged beds, with personal items like clothes, books, and toys laid beside them, suggesting that children had been staying here. A heavy feeling settled in Matthew's stomach. This place was more than a mere refuge. It had been used to house children. He looked back at the girl, standing hesitantly at the threshold. She gestured toward a large wardrobe against the far wall. With cautious steps, Matthews approached the worn piece of furniture, its elegant woodwork now chipped and faded. Opening the doors, he discovered a hidden compartment behind a false back, revealing more evidence of habitation: blankets, food, and personal belongings. The girl stepped closer and pointed to the back of the wardrobe, then mimed a knocking motion. Instantly, Matthews grasped the implication. Something or someone was concealed behind it. He gently shifted the false back, unveiling a cramped, dark space barely large enough for a person. The flashlight beam settled on a young boy in the corner, his eyes reflecting anxiety. Immediately, the girl rushed to comfort him with a soothing touch. Overcome with emotion, Matthews wiped away tears and crouched down. "It's okay," he assured them. "You're safe now." The boy looked up, shifting his gaze between the girl and Matthews, as if weighing whether to trust this stranger. After a hesitant moment, he gave a slow nod. Matthews felt a wave of relief, but recognized that their ordeal was far from resolved. They needed to escape swiftly. He turned to the girl. "Is there anyone else?" he asked softly. She shook her head, her response heavy with implications. They had found those they came for, yet the peril was palpable. They had to escape and unravel the mystery of this disturbing find. Matthews steadied himself as the harsh reality set in. The young boy clung to the girl, their connection evident in her comforting presence. Matthews took a moment to survey the room, noticing shelves lined with hastily packed boxes and crates containing electronics, jewelry, and other valuables. His heart sank as he pieced together the grim puzzle. This wasn't merely a hideout, it functioned as a stash house, likely connected to a local criminal group. He faced the girl again, her grasp of the situation apparent in her trembling hands. From her pocket, she retrieved a crumpled photograph, hesitating before handing it over. It was a family portrait, slightly faded but warm with smiles from a woman and a man embracing the girl at the center. The realization struck Matthews hard. The girl had been abducted. "Were you taken from your family?" he asked gently. She nodded, tears welling up as the boy tightened his grip on her. This revelation meant they were in grave danger. They needed to leave and alert the authorities. Matthews crouched to her level. "Do you know who brought you here?" She nodded again, her eyes flicking toward the door as she mimed someone carrying a heavy burden, then gestured at the stolen items. Matthews understood. The kidnappers had used the children to transport and store their illicit goods in this secluded spot. Time was critical. He pocketed the photograph and gently touched the girl's shoulder. "We're going to get you and your friend out of here," he promised. "But we have to move fast." The girl helped the boy up, and Matthews led them back toward the hallway, suddenly hearing the low rumble of an approaching vehicle. His heart raced. The kidnappers were returning. He turned to the children. "We need to hide. Now." They ducked into a nearby room, pressing against the wall as footsteps resonated in the building. Matthews held his breath, his mind racing with plans. They had stumbled upon a dark secret, and now their survival hinged on staying one step ahead of the looming danger. The main hall of the building was eerily quiet. Officer James Matthews was taking cover behind an old, flipped-over table with the young girl and boy nestled beside him. The echo of approaching footsteps intensified. The door creaked open slowly, revealing two rough-looking individuals. A tall man, his face marked by a scar, peered around the room, his gaze fixed on the children as he entered. "There they are," he declared, stepping forward with determination. His associate, slightly shorter but equally imposing, followed, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Matthews took immediate action. He urged the children to stay behind the table, using it as a protective barrier. "Stay low," he instructed in a hushed tone. Then he charged at the first man with a burst of energy, his movements honed by extensive training. The large man threw a punch, but Matthews evaded it and countered with a quick jab to his abdomen. The man bent over, gasping, and Matthews seized the opportunity to incapacitate him. He grabbed the man's arm, twisted it back, and forcefully pushed him against the wall. The impact rendered the man unconscious. Observing his partner's downfall, the second man attacked Matthews with a knife. Matthews avoided the strike, seized his wrist, and twisted it, causing the knife to fall. He then executed a swift move that knocked the man to the ground. The man tried to stand and attack once more, but Matthews was prepared. He delivered a strong kick to the man's knee and a punch to his jaw, knocking him out. Exhausted yet vigilant, Matthews scanned the hall for any further threats. Assured of their safety, he turned to the children, still crouched behind the table, his tone calm and comforting. "It's over. You're safe now." He knew they needed to exit the building quickly and contact support. Helping the children up, he led them toward the exit, keeping an eye out for any additional dangers. Once outside, the cool night air greeted them. Matthews guided the children into the woods, staying concealed as he contacted help. With the children secure and the threat neutralized, he felt a renewed sense of hope. Their ordeal wasn't over, but they were significantly closer to safety. The girl clung to her worn-out teddy bear, her eyes showing fatigue and fear. Matthews draped his jacket over her shoulders, reassuring her once more. "You're safe now," he repeated. "Help is on its way." The girl, tears glistening in her eyes, looked up at him and spoke for the first time. "My name is Siobhan Bennett." Hearing the name, Matthews was taken aback. He recalled the unresolved case of Siobhan Bennett, who vanished after a tragic car accident that claimed her parents. Thought to have perished, her disappearance had remained a mystery. "Siobhan Bennett?" he echoed. She nodded, tears now freely flowing. She shared that she had been taken and forced to aid her captors after being told her parents were gone forever. Though she didn't mention the boy's name, Matthews committed to ensuring his family would also find closure. Overcome with emotion, Matthews admired Siovan's courage despite her traumatic experiences. As sirens neared, signifying the arrival of backup and medical assistance, he regarded the moment not just as a rescue, but a miraculous reunion. Siovan's former home, a grand Victorian structure adorned with ivy, came into view. Her grandparents, now caretakers of the estate, emerged, disbelieving the sight before them. "Sean," her grandmother uttered, her voice trembling. The girl ran into their open arms, her tears continuing as her grandparents embraced her. Inside, the house was a living memory of happier times, with photos and mementos of Siovan and her parents. Holding Siovan close, her grandmother expressed their relentless hope. "We knew you were out there. We never stopped looking." Amidst the emotional reunion, Matthews learned the extent of the family's enduring love and pain for Siovan. This marked a new beginning, surrounded by familial love. For Matthews, it reaffirmed his commitment to his duty. Weeks later, the community gathered to celebrate Matthews' bravery. Amidst festive decorations and a joyful atmosphere, he was honored with a medal. Siovan, alongside her grandparents, beamed with happiness as the mayor praised Matthews' heroic actions. "This celebration honors not just a brave officer, but the enduring spirit of our community," the mayor proclaimed. Siovan hugged Matthews tightly, thanking him. He returned her embrace, moved by the impact of his actions on her future. As the celebration wound down, the sense of community and resilience was palpable. Matthews looked around, filled with pride, knowing his efforts would be remembered.